Today we're going to be talking about coffee scales and answering the question, do you need to spend a lot of money to actually get a good coffee scale? Before we do that, I just want to say welcome to Kabin's Coffee Corner. If you could like and subscribe, that really helps me produce more content. And if you're looking at purchasing any of these scales, please use the link below. I'll make a slight commission at no extra charge to you. That money goes straight back into this channel to help me produce more videos. So here I have 6 scales with me, ranging from prices all the way down to $30 up to $250. So quite a bit of a different range on things, and we're going to get into it and see which one is kind of worth it. So I want to go over what scales I have first. The first one that I have is the Timor Mirror Basic Plus coffee scale. This one's about $60. I have the Maestri House coffee scale, which comes in at about $35, and then we have the newly released Mirror coffee scale, which comes in about $60. Moving forward, we have the premium side of things. We have the Akaya Pearl Black coffee scale. These might be a little dirty from when I've been using them. We have the Akaya Lunar scale, and we have the Akaya Cinco or Pixis scale, because the Cinco was a 5th year anniversary scale and they switched it to the Pixis. But the Pearl is $150. I believe the Akaya Lunar is $250 and the Akaya Pixis is $275. So we're talking about a significant portion of these things. So one of the things that you need to look for in a coffee scale when purchasing is how does it weigh. And what I mean by that is it should be weighing to 1/10 of a gram at least on scales. So if it's just gram increments that you get, I would avoid that scale and get something that's a little precise. I've used those scales. It gets the job done for pour overs for starting out. They're like $10, but I think it's worth spending a little bit more to get a little bit better quality to begin with. Also not featured, but a scale that I have used is the Kitchen Boss, which comes in at $100, which is pretty expensive and I don't think is the best option for a scale when you have these as an option. So I want to start off with the newest one that I have in my collection, which is the Mirror one that just came out from a Kickstarter campaign for their pour over. And this is really designed for pour over only. So it has like a little recessed area on the scale itself, and it also has this little pad that sits on it perfectly, does not move around, and also still has that recessed spot for the carafe as well. One of the things I don't like about this is the rubber pad has like little white specks all throughout it, and I feel like it's always lint even though it's not. However, the scale does weigh pretty precisely, accurately, and it's pretty easy to turn on, and it's charged by USB-C, which almost all these scales outside of the Pixis charged by USB-C. The new Akaya Lunar and the new Pearl do charge by USB-C, even though I don't have those. I have the older model and there's no reason to upgrade from that. But pretty accurate on the Mirror one. $60 is a good value. However, if you're trying to put this on an espresso machine, it's just too large. But if you're using a Chemex or the Mirror carafe that this was made for, it is well worth it, and I think does a really, really good job on that. Moving next is the cheapest scale that we have, which I honestly like the looks of the cheapest scale out of all of these the best. So one of the things that all of these scales have is the base plate. The top plate kind of weighs on top of the base plate. So in other words, some scales have 4 different feet, and those feet have to be placed on an even surface, and that's how it kind of gauges the scale. This one has all of these scales have a solid bottom and a top on it, and anything on the top will weigh it. So in other words, if you place it on a drip tray, you're not going to have an issue with it. But this is a metal top, which makes it a little bit cold, but it works well. It maybe has a few issues of turning on and off a little more than the other scales. It just takes a little bit longer and it's not as precise with it, but you're also spending half the price on it. And once you use it a little bit more, you get used to it. This works for espresso and it works for pour over. Obviously the Mirror one is going to give you a bit more of a surface and a bigger readout, but I really like the Maestri House one. They did send me this for free. The rest of these I paid for, but they don't see any content that I make on this until I release it. And then we have the Timor one. The Timor one is probably one of my favorite scales. This is my only scale that I have at my office setup. Yes, I know I'm a little bougie with that, but I have a Breville dual boiler and a pour over system in my office setup. So I can put a portafilter on this. I can charge it there. I can do a portafilter, a pour over, whatever I want to do on it, and then put it on my drip tray for it. It grinds pretty well. It doesn't grind real well. It weighs really well, very quick and very accurate, and it's a really, really good scale. And for $60, I would definitely like, this is more of an all-arounder versus the mirror one. But if I were just doing pour-overs, I would get the mirror one because it just set up really nicely for it, and I really like it. But for an all-arounder, this Time War seems like the way to go for $60. It's a little bit quicker and a little bit better than the Maestri House one, but the Maestri House one is a little thinner and still a good option, and I wouldn't. It's kind of tough between those two. I like the use of the Time War one a little bit better, but the Maestri House is just a really good value for $30. Moving on to the premium scales. So we kind of have three different options here. We have the Acaia Pearl, which is meant for pour overs here, which I typically use for pour overs, or I typically use it for weighing out my doses when I single dose. Just because I had an extra scale, you might as well utilize it for that. Obviously, any scale can be used that way. It comes with a little pad on there. They have changed the pad, and it also scratches like crazy. So the top glass part of this is just covered in scratches. There's no way for me to really show it. But I've had this scale for, I think this was one of like the first scales that I bought. Like I just jumped all in. I bought a $10 scale and then jumped to the expensive one. But it does scratch really easily, and that's kind of disappointing. So it is what it is, but for an expensive scale to scratch a lot, I'm not super thrilled about it. The next one is the Acaia Lunar, which is water resistant, and the Pearl is not. And this, I absolutely love this scale. I think if you were looking for one and done scale, you could only buy one, and you mainly did espresso, I would 100% buy the Acaia Lunar. It's small. You can buy a little case for it. You can throw it in a bag if you want to. It's pretty heavy duty. It comes with this nice little pad. You can weigh a portafilter on it. You can do a full-size Chemex on it. So one of the things you can do is Acaia has an app, and that app will allow you to remotely use the scale. Not remotely. It's like Bluetooth. So like, in other words, if you're covering up the screen, you can see it pretty accurately on your phone as you're pouring and all that stuff. So in other words, if you have a big carafe on it, you can pull out your phone and view everything that the scale says on your phone, so it doesn't matter if you cover up the screen, which I find incredibly useful. I don't make a ton of pour overs, so if I made a ton of pour overs, I feel like that would be a very frustrating experience. But for travel, and I want to save on space, getting that app does an incredible job for that. But really, it's not like crazy smaller than the Maestri House one. You'll never need to upgrade. You won't need to upgrade from the scale for a very long time. And the last one is the Acaia Cinco. This one is like, I'm gonna go like ultralight backpacking type of a thing, and still want to have really precision on my coffee type of a scale. It's obviously super, super small. It barely fits like an espresso cup on it, but again, it still hooks up to the app as well. And this does it weighs to 1/100 of a gram. All of these weigh to a tenth of a gram, but this one does 1/100 of a gram. Not that you really ever need to be that precise, in my opinion. Great for espresso. Any cappuccino cups, I don't really like to use this scale. I do use it for traveling though. This is my travel scale, obviously, because it comes with this nice case, and it's very, very portable, very, very small. But honestly, I would not say that this is worth the money for it. It's way better just to spend some money and get this scale and a case for it and take up a little bit more space and be more versatile. If you put a cappuccino cup on that small one, it's just hard to read, and you don't want to pull out your phone to make a shot of espresso on that. Why would you buy an expensive scale? Why would you spend $250 on a scale versus, say, $30 for the Maestri House or $60 for the Time War? And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the ability to be controlled by that app to allow you to have be able to read your scale from your phone, which could be a benefit in some circumstances. I know not all circumstances, and it's not a regular thing that I use. The app has a lot of features and stuff in a community, but I've never really actually utilized that, and I don't know anybody who does, even if they have these scales. But here's the main reason. The main reason you'd maybe want this is if you want Bluetooth connectivity for other circumstances in the coffee world. So some machines allow you to connect through another app to give statistical charts of your espresso. So for example, I use a Flare 58, and I have used this thing called the Smart Espresso Profile, or the newly released Press Sensor, and both of these are from kind of one company that split off and they went separate ways. There doesn't seem to be hard feelings or anything. They just kind of have a little different approach to things and a couple different apps. But the thing is, you can connect. You have to have one of these scales, the Akaya scales, to connect to this app because it has to have Bluetooth. So when you connect to this app, you will then be able to have your pressure readout and your flow readout and your weight and everything on there. And that's something that you can only get with having a Bluetooth scale. So I wouldn't get all the results that I would get having the Time War and having the Maestri House. However, that's a very niche thing. But I feel like as we've continued to go forward in espresso and grinders and machines and stuff like that, I feel like the trend is going to continue to give more access to be able to do that, and you might miss out on some of that stuff if you don't get an Akaya, which is kind of crazy. It's expensive scale. It's 5 times as much as basically these other scales, which makes it a little bit questionable on it. So I would say if you're just going to make pour overs or you're just going to make espresso, it doesn't really make sense to spend $250 on a scale. Yes, it will give you the best results. It reads a little bit faster than the other ones, but not enough to make a difference. Most people probably aren't going to be competing, so it's not as necessary to have all of those features in there. So basically, buy an Akaya if you're planning on really, really nerding out in espresso, and maybe want that pressure gauge, or maybe you want to see flow rate and stuff like that, and have that Bluetooth capability to continue to grow your espresso gear and your grinder and things like that. So if you buy an Akaya, it's a one and done thing. I've had these things for years now and have never I need a new scale type of a thing, except for I bought the Kickstarter mirror and it came with this mirror and it came with the scale. Maestri House sent me this one in exchange for a review, and this one came in a bundle of a used machine that I bought, which I was actually quite surprised with, both the Maestri House and these. But basically what I'm saying here is you don't have to feel like you need to spend $250 on a scale or $150 on a scale to get good results at home. Honestly, this Maestri House one, it's going to get you there. It's going to be perfect. Flare made another one for $50. That seems very, very promising as well, and it fits under the base of all the flares. So if you're one of those people, that will help you on that journey. But yeah, that's kind of my thought. Is I would recommend spending $30 on the Maestri House one or $60 on the Time War one, and you'll get a little bit better results maybe on the Time War one. But I don't think that Akayas are worth it unless you're really going to go in the deep end of espresso. If you have any questions on any of these scales, feel free to drop that in the comments below, and I would love to help you out. But I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and again, please like and subscribe if you find my videos helpful.